In the newly revised Teacher's Handbook, the official guideline for junior high school teaching, reference is made to Takeshima for the first time as Japan's own territory, though only in a roundabout expression in consideration of South Korea. Japan and South Korea have disputed the territorial rights of Takeshima, which is known in South Korea as Dokdo. However, the reference has caused deep resentment in the South Korean government, which has decided to temporarily recall its ambassador from Tokyo. The ministry today briefed Board of Education members on the new educational guidelines. Prior to the briefing, the ministry was required to decide whether Takeshima should be described as a territory that's an inherent part of Japan. The newly revised Teacher's Handbook was completed just in time for the briefing. The handbook only supplements the official guidelines. It's in this handbook that the ministry for the first time has made a reference to Takeshima. In consideration of South Korea, the handbook mentions that there's a dispute over territorial rights of Takeshima between Japan and South Korea. However, the handbook also refers to the need to promote among students understanding toward our own territories together with the northern territories.
A ministry official says the decision was rather made after comprehensive consideration over the voices calling for the reference.
The ministry had originally planned to include reference to Takeshima as territory inherent to Japan, but decided not to include the reference in consideration to the public opinion in South Korea, whose president had just assumed office. The ministry then decided to use a roundabout expression in the legally non-binding handbook in referring to Takeshima. The ministry apparently takes pride in the measure they have finally worked out. Next, we look at changes in the description of Takeshima, which is known in South Korea as Dokdo. In the current handbook, there's no reference to Takeshima, but the new revised version touches on the dispute between Japan and South Korea over Takeshima and describes the need to foster understanding towards our country's territories among students, together with the Northern Territories issues. The Northern Territories are clearly described as Japanese domain in the handbook. By combining the two descriptions, Takeshima could be interpreted to be Japanese territory. However, it could also be interpreted as a mere recommendation to promote understanding towards our own territories. Well, taking offense, the South Korean government has decided to recall its ambassador to Tokyo. We have a live report from Seoul, South Korea.
The South Korean government has begun active in response to this after deciding that it will recall its ambassador to Japan. The spokesman says the decision cannot be accepted by the South Korean government, and we demand the Japanese ambassador to explain on the Japanese government's action. The South Korean foreign minister has summoned the Japanese ambassador to demand an explanation, and the South Korean presidential office has expressed a deep disappointment and regret, while President Lee Myung-bak reportedly has ordered a strict measure against such sovereignty issue. South Korea has remained consistent in claiming that Takeshima is traditionally South Korean territory. It intends to increase residents on the island to reinforce its control on the island. Also, South Korea has decided to recall its ambassador to Japan. South Korea has been dealing with strong protesters against the resumption of American beef, which had led to anti-government movements. But now the new development could lead to anti-Japanese sentiment, which is the major concern right now. South Korea remains adamant it cannot compromise at all when it comes to territorial issues.
Meanwhile, Chief Cabinet Secretary Nobutaka Machimura is calling for calm.
It's out of consideration over South Korea-Japanese relations, and that is Japanese intention to minimize any strained relations between the two nations, so we expect South Korea to react with calm as well.
Japan claims that out of concern for the issue's implications for the ongoing six-party talks and North Korea's abductions issues, it carefully chose the expression to reaffirm its territorial claim.
A dispute over the Takeshima islets is growing after the Japanese government approved a new junior high school teaching aid which mentions the Takeshima issue. Protests have been staged in South Korea.
Protesters say stop the description of the Dr. islets immediately.
People set fire to the rising sun flag in a box simulating the official guidelines for school teaching. About 30 people from a conservative group held a protest rally outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul. South Korean media today reported the Japanese government decision as the top story. Newspaper front pages criticized Japan's move, saying it trashed the self-esteem of the Republic of Korea.
Why do they say that the Dr. Island is theirs? It's absurd. We're just so infuriated by this. South Korean ambassador to Japan says, as one of the people that consider Japan to be important, I must say I feel anger and saddened.
South Korean ambassador to Japan, Kong Chol-hyun, met Japanese Vice Foreign Minister Mitoji Yabunaka at the Foreign Ministry in Tokyo and filed a protest.
The Foreign Minister says, we all stand in different positions, and thus we need to discuss with calm to fill the gap between the two.
On Thursday evening, a huge rally protesting the resumption of U.S. beef imports is scheduled in Seoul. Suspecting that the rally could turn into an anti-Japanese gathering, security around the Japanese embassy is beefing up, mobilizing more than 100 police officers.